All right, dear students, today's class is all about pragmatics, and we are going to introduce what subject actually is. I told you because pragmatics is such an interesting subject, which is very much concerned with logic as well. When you say pragmatics, it's a study of meaning. When you say meaning, for example, what sort of meaning? Words have the literal meaning and words have associative meaning. Associate, for example, when you say, I need a chair, I've been waiting for a long time. I need a chair. This means that. Now, what sort of meaning is it? It's a literal meaning. You need a chair to sit on because you are feeling fatigued, right? So when it comes to pragmatics, we don't mean that meaning. We are concerned with the meaning which is associative. We associate, something to that particular word. For example, he has won the elections and now he is looking for a chair. So in that context, it's not the chair to sit on. It's certainly the chair, the bigger one. And here, chair is very much associated with the power, right? So that is pragmatics actually. Let's begin now. When you say pragmatics, uh, in this class, we'll be talking about introduction, what pragmatics actually is, and how pragmatics is defined by different scholars. And we'll be understanding the utterance as well and what is being discussed in pragmatics. That's what we are going to discuss in today's class. People do not always say what they mean or what they say. You must be understanding what this utterance or statement mean. This statement means that people do not always say what they mean. Okay, for example, saying they say something, but they mean differently. All right. So because whatever they say, and when you look at the words they say, and when you look at their facial expressions, so they mismatch. This mismatch shows that, generally speaking, we say it's a body language. उसके body language से ये नहीं लगता था, whatever he was or she was saying, but he or she did not mean exactly that. Okay, ये pragmatics होता है. Once we this is a picture. Once we have a look, we should make it clear. I mean, let's make it zoom now. For example, all right, now. Can you look at the picture, everyone? Yes. Yes, that's visible. Okay. Once we look at this picture, this clearly shows that, it's between a student and a teacher, especially the supervisor. She's Cecilia, and Professor Jones says to her, can you stop by my office? We need to talk. How dangerous is that? Once you receive such sort of email by your professor, this can mean, for example, so many things. Okay, so many doubts, so many concerns could be created once a teacher or your supervisor says like this. So what could it mean possibly? Let's talk about the meaning. For example, we need to talk. What it can mean, let's talk about the meanings. All right, the first one is, we can mean that, for example, you're fired. You're going to face the toughest time right now. Your appointment with the teacher can be the difficult one. Or some sort of, bad remarks or some sort of embarrassing remarks you're going to receive by your supervisor. This could be the possibility you're fired. Number two meaning could be, I forgot what your project is about. Can you remind me? This could also mean, right? The third one, I have a trivial request. that I'm too embarrassed to write in an email. Right. So this utterance, this expression, the first one, what is that expression? Can someone read it? What the Professor Jones said to her student? Yes. Can anyone read it? Yes. Professor Jones said, can you stop by my office? We need to talk. All right. That seems to be very dangerous. Dangerous in the sense the expressions of a student are very much clear. You can see, once you're receiving such sort of email that can have possible meaning we just talked about. Okay. So, oh, so that's how you change the logo. I'm both relieved and annoyed. So all these meanings are pragmatic ones. When we say pragmatics, for example, it could be speaker meaning. Speaker meaning could be one, and the listener meaning could be other one. Hearer meaning could be other one. For example, when I say something to you, I might have decided, I must have decided something, right? Okay, my expression or my utterances mean this. But that's not, necessarily you may understand exactly the same one or the different one. So that depends on your understanding, right? So whatever the word, whatever an expression, whatever an utterance means, that depends on the context, then depends on your understanding, that depends on the speaker meaning also, right? So such set of meanings derived from one utterance, okay, they are pragmatic ones. Right. You can have a look on this as well. We are not discussing this one, but let's go straight away. What is pragmatics? Are you there, everyone?
Yes, sir.
All right. What is pragmatics? Let's talk about it. Pragmatics is the very first thing is study of speaker meaning. Study of speaker meaning means whatever the intentions of the speaker are. Okay. For example, speaker can say something and can mean differently. That again comes under the domain of pragmatics, most of the time. For example, let's look at the political statements, right? In an ongoing war, what the President of the United States says and what is the Supreme Leader of Iran says. You can understand that. For example, people say something and that can mean differently. That again depends on speaker meaning. Pragmatics is number one, the study of speaker meaning. Number two, pragmatics is the study of contextual meaning. Here, the context is very important. Okay, you say something, but what was the context? Context means situation. What was the situation? What was the need to say like that? For example, if I say something in the class, can mean something, but when the same thing is said in a different context, in a social context or in a home-like situation, that means different. Okay? That means different from the classroom situation because it's the context that changes the meaning. If the member of National Assembly, all right, makes a long speech and at the end, in a concluding remark, he says, I'm looking for a chair. He says, I'm looking for a chair. That doesn't simply mean that the chair he needs to sit on. Okay, he means the chair which is very much associated with the palm, right? But in a classroom, for example, a teacher like me, keeps talking about a particular topic and is standing in the class for more than an hour in case of 2 classes, and then he says, I need a chair. That means the teacher feels fatigued, he is tired, he needs to sit on, and that's why he needs a chair. Yes, he needs a chair, and that is the chair which is physical one, which is the semantic meaning. All right. Thirdly, it says the study of how more gets communicated than is said. More communicated than is said. You say something and you mean differently. That's a study of pragmatics again. The study of expression of relative distance, that's what pragmatics is about. Okay, understanding the utterance. Utterance is again the part of, what is utterance? For example, utterance is an expression. Utterance could be, voice, noise, statement, anything which is meaningful. For example, if I say, shh, that's again meaningful. That's an utterance. Okay. So let's understand. 3 things are very important: syntax, pragmatics, and semantics. Let's understand them. Syntax is actually the relationship between linguistic forms, how they are arranged in sequence, and which sequence are well formed, right? So syntax is all about arranging, organizing words and giving them a proper word order. And semantics is actually the relationship between linguistic forms and entities in the world. Linguistic forms and entities. For example, when you say a word chair, when we say a word tree, what is the relation of that word tree with the physical entity, with the physical thing in the world? Whenever we say tree, so does it exist in the world? Yes, it does. Okay. So that literal meaning is very much associated. Literal meaning is the semantics. And then it's pragmatics, the relationship between linguistic forms and their uses. Only pragmatics allows humans into the analysis. Pragmatics is what we are going to discuss. We are, discussing. So when you talk about pragmatics, 3 things are very important. The speaker, the context, the reason, speaker intention, and regularity, right?